Hey everybody! Today I want to welcome the first ever Beauty Biz Marketing Coach to the Next Level Confident podcast. This woman's goal is to help women reach their highest potential through mindset and marketing strategies. So let's give a warm welcome to Kelly Ann. Yay!
Woo!
How are you, Kelly?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing really well, thank you.
Awesome.
You guys, anyone who's listening, if you want to check out Kelly, her Instagram is at @Iam_Kelly, and that's spelled Kelly, Ann, ANN. Or if you want to check out her podcast is really awesome. It's called Wake Up to Level Up. So, Kelly, will you
Yes.
tell people a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in LA. So I'll just give you like kind of the Cliff Note version here. It's always weird doing these like little introductions, right? Um, so yeah, I grew up in LA. I loved LA at that moment in time. No longer do I love LA so much. I live in San Diego now. But I started off, as far as career goes, I started off in sales for a long time. I was working the corporate 9 to 5 job, and I was making six figures by around the age of 25, which was great, but it was
Yeah.
sucking. Yeah, I know, make that money. But it was like soul sucking, it was like one of those things where you just went to work, you were dragging your feet to work, and it just wasn't a good fit. And after a couple of years basically of doing that, I realized at one point I just needed to get out of there, and I had saved some money. I ended up just quitting just randomly, out of the blue. I told you I'm not a planner.
You're like, you know what?
And
Today's the day. Bye.
yeah, basically. I mean, I did put my 2 weeks in. That they didn't want me to be there for the 2 weeks, and I said that's totally fine. You guys can pay me if you want. And so, yeah, I went around and I traveled. I traveled for a year and a half, and I did that because I really wanted to take time. I was having like a quarter life like crisis, I guess, which it wasn't really a crisis. It's actually probably the best time, one of the best times of my life. And I just traveled all over the place. I met with friends. I traveled solo. And I remember looking at my bank account after about 18 months of traveling and seeing like $2,000 in my bank account. So at that point, I was like, okay, got to do something. And I need to either go back to work and work the 9 to 5 or, start my own business, which is something that I've always wanted to do. So I did some research and saw a mobile spray tanning business opportunity where you could literally buy the equipment. You didn't really need any type of licensing or anything like that. So I spent my last couple grand in that, and I just took the leap of faith and just did it, and was able to grow my business from that literally like $0 to a multi-six-figure international business within 2 years. So now I travel and train girls. I'm a speaker. I'm a coach. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I love it. I really do.
That is so cool. So what type of industry were you in for your 8 to 5?
Yeah. So I did a lot of telecommunications. So Sprint PCS back in the
Mm,
day. I did T-Mobile. I did Cox Communications out here in San Diego, which is I think Time Warner now or something like that. But yeah, internet, phone, cable. That was like my jam back then.
yeah. Wow, that is a drastic change. So did you go to college for anything like in that or?
I did go to college. I graduated with a BA in psychology, and I feel like psychology you can kind of use with everything. I was just very interested in the mind, and I love that. And I'm glad that I went, but it wasn't anything that I felt like I was really going to pursue. It was just more of like, let me just check this off the bucket list and see what happens. And like I was telling you earlier, I'm really not a planner. I'm kind of more of like a feeler. So I'll just kind of flow through life. And really, if I feel pulled and inspired to do something, I usually take action, immediate action on it, which is a great thing and also kind of a bad thing sometimes too. But for the most part, it's worked out really well.
That's cool. Okay, so you're making all this bank. You're like making six figures working for the cable industry. So you had obviously saved up a fair amount because you were able to travel for 18 months, right?
Right.
And
Hmm.
then you dwindled all that down to the $2,000 mark. And then what led you to being like, Okay, actually, I'm gonna spray tan people.
So it's funny because I have journaled ever since I was little. And I remember that I had written down some ideas about just business opportunities that I saw would maybe fit my lifestyle and maybe something that I would enjoy. So I looked back at that journal entry, and the top thing on there said mobile spray tanning. I've never had a mobile spray tan. I don't even know how I thought about this idea. I think I was probably researching it. I have no clue, but I guess it's the universe's way of like telling me like, hey, here you go. And so I just looked into it, and it was so easy and so fun. And I've always wanted to work with women exclusively. Like I love men, but I don't want to work with them. So I've always wanted to work with women, and that kind of just fit my lifestyle and exactly what I wanted to do. So I tried it out, and yeah, here I am.
That
Spray
is
tan Slayer.
so cool. I love it. Okay, awesome. Well, you guys, so our topic today is how to walk away from your funk and take hell bent action. So, Kelly,
Mm,
I know you shared your story with me, whatever, a week or two ago when we talked on the phone, and I was just amazed at how much has happened in your life because I think often what happens is, when you see someone so successful on social media or in their business or whatever, it's so easy to just be like, oh, their whole life, they've got it all figured out and they aren't going through the
mm,
things I'm going through. But when you guys hear Kelly's story, you're going to realize like she has been through so much during this time. And
mm.
yeah, I'm excited just for you to share your vulnerable story with everyone so they can hear like no matter what you're going through, you can get out and you can find a way to recreate yourself, recreate your life. So with that said, tell us tell
Yeah.
us what's going on in the last couple of years of your life.
Yeah. So I started the business when I was, I want to say around like 27, more or less. And I started the business, and it was growing, 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 and it was doing really good. I was, pretty happy. I had lived in San Diego. My relationships with men, I don't know. I've just never really been great at them. So I would date, and then I'd always get cheated on, or I'd find them in lies. And it was just always like some chaotic ending. And it's just, I was so tired of that, honestly. So I was like, I'm not going to date for a while. I'm just going to, chill by myself, focus on my business, and really find out why I keep on attracting the same type of human into my life. So I was really doing that for a while, and I was at the gym, and this is probably at like I wouldn't say the peak of my career, but it was definitely flourishing in a really, really good way. And I remember just going to the gym and constantly like seeing this guy over and over and over again. And I'm not very shy. So I ended up going up to him and asking if he could help me get a weight because I'm really short. I'm like 5 foot. So and yeah, it ended up being somebody that I was really, really physically, mentally, emotionally attracted to. And we ended up dating for about a year and a half and decided like we were going to get married. And so during this time, he was actually very helpful with helping me build a salon here in San Diego. He was really helpful with actually even like doing the YouTube channel with me. We traveled around to host spray tan training tours and all of these things. So he was like a huge part of my life and my business. And a lot of people saw us together. And, it was a really cool experience. I really wouldn't take it back for anything because it was amazing. But I remember, as my business started to take off and as we started to cultivate this like really, really strong following of people and really a strong business together and a lifestyle together and just, us being together, it was just such a strong connection. I remember just saying, things are like way too good right now.
Mm.
Never say that again. By the way, I feel like I manifested some bad shit. At least half of it. At least half of it.
Mm.
But so yeah. So we started really cultivating a really good relationship, and then I was pretty much ready to dive in and really stay with this man for the rest of my life. And we ended up getting married. And it's really hard for me to talk about right now. And I don't know why, but I've told this story many of times, and it's just like going back into that space and just being like, wow, I can't believe I went through all that. So we ended up getting married and everything was fine up until 3 months after we got married. And I remember looking at him and being like, something's off. Like something is really weird with him, because at the time he was sober when I met him. And that's something that really attracted me to him, because I love that. Like I don't really want to date anybody that's a partier or anything like that. And he just looked off. And I asked him if he was drinking or doing drugs or something. And he admitted that he was doing drugs and drinking. And so that was kind of the first whirlwind. That was kind of the first like knock, to my head, I guess. And he ended up leaving the house. And I get a text about 2 hours later saying, our secrets make us sick. So I'm thinking, like, what the hell is he talking about?
Yeah.
And he texted me. Yeah, I know. It's like a really creepy text to get, right? And so he told me that he had a kid that he didn't tell me about.
Mm.
Yeah. So that
Wow.
was 3 months. Yeah. So that was very, like, it almost felt like an out of body experience, where you're just kind of like, am I in a dream? Is this a dream? Because we had such a perfect, quote unquote, perfect relationship. And so much so that I always thought, it was too good to be true. And there's a reason for that now that I've learned, and I'll share that with you in just a little bit. But we ended up basically trying to work through that. And throughout the next couple of months, I noticed that he was still using and still drinking and all of these things. So we ended up going on a tour stop actually in Texas. And this was
So,
kind of where,
Kelly,
yeah.
to interrupt you really fast. So he was still with you, like with business though? Like you guys were doing business, like his full-time job was with you guys doing your business together. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So during this time, he had lost his job, right? He got laid off, he told me. And he also totaled his car. And I could not figure out, like, I was just like, this guy has the worst luck ever,
Mm.
So all of these like little, like, well, not little things, but all of these things started happening. And so, yeah, he was working with me full time and we were building this business together. He was not signed into the business. Thank God. He was not signed
Mm.
into the business or anything like that. So it was my business. He was just really helping me with it. And we ended up going to this, it's called a Slay the Spray tour, where we go and travel and train girls on how to spray tan. And so we were at one of the tour stops and I get a message late at night from one of my students. I didn't know where he was at that time. I assumed that he was, out just grabbing something to eat. I wasn't too sure. And I get a message from one of my students saying, hey, is he okay? He's laying out in the hallway, just passed out.
Oh my gosh. I just got
Yeah.
chills.
Yeah. And, when you know somebody granted, we knew each other for a good 2 years when this happened, but when you live with somebody every single day and you've never seen them suffer in that way, or you've never really seen anybody suffer in that way, you are distraught, you are confused, you're pissed, you're emotional, you're sad. Like there's so many different emotions that come along with having someone who is an addict in your life. And I wasn't aware of all of this because I have never been through it. So, after that, I knew that we had a problem. I knew that there was something terribly wrong with this whole entire picture. So we tried to work through it because he is my husband, he's my
Right.
husband, and I wanted to stay strong and try to work things out because he was a quote unquote perfect guy. And we ended up going on our honeymoon a little bit later, probably like 9 months after we actually got married, and almost a year actually, that, to the day that we got married. And this is where everything kind of just fell apart.
Mm.
This was kind of like my last, straw with him. I was in a bad place already with him, and I was just thinking, what, maybe this is going to help us. So we went to Thailand and Cambodia. My dad actually lives in Cambodia. So
Oh, wow.
so he's all the way across the world. And we don't get to see him often, obviously, but so we went to go visit him. And the first day that we went to visit him, I saw my ex doing something weird in the bathroom, and I kind of was just like staring at him, and I opened up the door a little bit more and I found about 80 pills in his hand.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I didn't know he took pills. Like I wasn't too sure about like what drugs he took or anything like that, but we have a huge epidemic here in the US, especially with opioids and drug addiction and prescription pills and all of these things. And so I'm learning, I have learned a lot about that going to his rehab and stuff. So I was just in this place of like disbelief. I was just not really understanding what was going on. And the fact that he would do this, especially on our honeymoon when my dad is there, it just didn't make any sense. So literally for like 6 days or so, he was out of his mind the whole entire time.
So, sorry to interrupt. Was he about to take that a whole like handful of pills, or like
I
you're
don't
saying you
think
saw all
so.
of them and he was just
I
going to
saw
take a
all.
few of them?
Yeah, I think he was just taking them bit by bit.
Okay, so he wasn't trying to like overdose or anything. He
Oh,
was That was just his
correct.
whole like plethora of what he had with him for the trip.
Yes. And actually, so in Thailand and Cambodia, you can actually go to the liquor stores or drug stores or something like that, and you can get these pills pretty easily. So
Oh.
yeah, so I don't know if he brought them. I mean, that was a lot of pills to bring on an airplane. So I don't know if he brought them or if he purchased them there. I'm assuming he just purchased them there. There was all kinds of colors, all kinds of shapes. Like I don't even know how one would survive doing even like a quarter of those things. So it was insane. But yeah, I don't think he was going to take them all. I think he was just going to take them little by little, and he ended up doing that, and he just went off the deep end. He ended up losing his passport for a little bit. He lost all his money. He lost his phone. And my dad had to try to recover all of his items because he lived there. He knew the people. And it was just an embarrassing, like sad moment to see somebody that you really, really care about having to go through this experience where it seemed like he had no control,
Mm.
like there was something taking over him. And so with that, we ended up leaving the honeymoon, the honeymoon from hell, a week
For real.
Seriously, it was crazy. And a week early, and we came back home, and he checked himself into rehab. And he was there at one of the most prestigious rehabs here in San Diego. And I went to visit him a couple of times. And I don't know, I just didn't feel like I felt like something was off again. I'm a very intuitive person.
Mm.
And I even had like a dream about, and my dreams a lot of the times come true. It's kind of crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it wasn't anything that I was like, am I projecting this? Am I just making shit up in my head? But I ended up finding out that they actually had slept together in the rehab. So he cheated on me in rehab with her, and
Mm.
she's married. Yeah, she's married. I met her parent or her mom and her husband, and he ended up getting her pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was kind of like the
Mm.
final straw. I was like, all right, girl, like I can't help him. I can't do anything at this point. And I just went into a really, really deep, dark place. I was really, really depressed. I've never felt that before because I'm a very, very positive person. I'm very uplifting. I inspire women for a living, like I am very
Yeah.
strong and resilient. And this was a moment that I was really brought down to my knees, and I just surrendered. I just couldn't do anything anymore. I felt like my soul had left my body. I just felt like it was very tough. It was a very, very tough, because not only did you lose like your best friend, you lost your lover, you lost your husband, I lost myself in that whole
Mm.
situation. So with that, I almost lost all my businesses because I stopped working. And little by little, for like the next 6 months, it was hell. It was me drinking a lot and just trying to numb the pain and having like the shades, closed and all of these things and just not wanting to see anybody. And I think I may have seen two people in like that time frame, it seemed like.
Mm.
And I was just not in a good place. But after 6 months, something really, really incredible happened. And it was an experience that I've never had before. So it's kind of tough to talk about it because I think a lot of people are like, are you crazy? What are you thinking? Like, did that really happen? And trust me, I question it all the time, but I know what happened that day. And it was an incredible feeling. And it was really like what I think saved my life. And so I was in my bathtub, and by this time, again, I was like drinking a lot of wine. I just wasn't caring about myself. I didn't care what was going on. I had no intention to get better. And I was in the bathtub, and all of a sudden, I started like hyperventilating. I wasn't crying or anything. I just started hyperventilating, like breathing in and breathing out really, really quick. And it seemed like only 30 seconds that I was doing that. And all of a sudden, I had this sensation that there were like, I don't know, spirits, something around me, just energy around me and just like embracing me. And I
Mm.
just started crying, like tears down my face, like kind of like I didn't really feel scared, but I was kind of just confused. I was like, what's going on right now? And it's almost as if spirit, my higher power, source, universe, God, Buddha, whatever you want to call it just knew that I was at the point of like not wanting to live anymore. And so when that happened, and that experience happened, I was like, I just felt like I started like touching like my legs, and I just felt so strong. I felt so strong. I felt supported. I felt helped. I felt like the whole message and the whole vision that I got was like, Kelly, get the fuck up. Like, get up, stop dwelling on all of this shit that happened, and get up and get off your ass and get up on your 2 feet and actually make moves that are not going to harm you. And so that experience happened, and I started meditating again. I started getting back into my spiritual rituals, which is like visualizations, meditation, yoga, and that sort of thing. And I started taking care of myself again. And I was meditating probably like the day after, and I heard the words "wake up to level up." It just like came to me out of nowhere. And I was just sitting there thinking like, okay, what does this mean? What does it mean?
Wake up, okay. I guess it's time to
Yeah.
wake up or something.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely time to wake up, girl. That was like intense, right? So super, super intense, like basically year and a half of just like going through the struggle. The struggle was so crazy real. And um, I definitely heard those words. And the next thing that I heard was like podcast and live event. And I just wrote that down because I knew that I would forget it. And immediately after, I started my podcast called Wake Up to Level Up, where it's like mindset and marketing. And that really gave me purpose again. That got me on my feet. It got me into my salon again. It got me moving. It got me inspired to actually connect with people again, because I shut everybody out. I didn't want to see anybody, and I didn't want anyone to see me like that. And with that, I decided that I have a really large community of beauty business professionals who, I interact with on a daily basis, whether it was Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or whatever. And, I had kind of went MIA obviously for a little bit, but
Of
I realized
course.
like,
And you had every right to be, by the way.
yeah, no, totally.
Sometimes you need that time. Like, I mean, obviously, I'm not saying drinking is good and I'm not saying blocking everyone out is good, but especially with business, like
Yeah.
when you go through something as painful as what you went through, it is
Yeah.
like dang near impossible to show up for other people and support them and teach them how to level up their entire life when you're
Like,
literally
I
at
need
the
to be
bottom. Yeah, you're like, I need support right now. And that's okay. We all have times of our life like that, period. Like every single one of us will have that in and out. I think like ebb and flow throughout our entire life. There'll be times where we'll be the supporter and there'll be times where
Yeah.
we need the support. And that's okay.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of us, I mean, for me personally, I'm just going to speak for myself. It's really hard for me to ask for help, especially when I'm a hot freaking mess.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone seeing me like that. So I just didn't want to. And it's actually really sad. I just found this. I found a note from my friend who actually had to come to my house because I wasn't answering my phone or anything. And she had left a note saying, like, you know, that we're going to get through this. And um, that was crazy to see because I forgot that she had even come over. I forgot that she was there, and because I was drunk and like not caring and sleeping and stuff. And I found that note probably about a month ago, and I reached out to her and I was like, "Thank you so much for checking up on me," because nobody else did. And
Mm.
not to say that it's anybody else's fault. This is all my shit. But it was really nice to have somebody that actually like really, really cared and was like, is she okay? So reading that kind of opened up that door again. And I just really know who like my girls are. So that was super special. And so, yeah, so I started the podcast and I was like in this mode of really wanting to create massive impact because at this point I realized like, what have I been doing my entire time as a spray tanning artist? And I loved it, but I was really chasing the dollar. It wasn't really about like the passion so much, or it wasn't about like the mission or the purpose. Like I love spray tanning, don't get me wrong, but it's not something I'm super uber passionate about. And still I feel that way. But what I am passionate about is like helping women and allowing them to see the potential of like living a truly amazing life. And I started doing that. I started mentoring girls and really helping them start their businesses and stuff like that. And so with the podcast came a lot of impact. It came a lot of purpose for me. And then having the live event like 6 months later, which was, by the way, like the scariest thing I've ever done. We had 150 women from all over the world come over and like hang out for 3 days, and it was amazing. I never hosted an event like that ever, and it was such a good event. And it's because I dropped into my heart and got out of my head.
Mm.
I was always so much in my head, but when you go through something traumatic like that, where you're brought to your knees, it's like one of those things where you have to really like do an inventory and an evaluation of like, what is really going on in my life? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to embrace? And how can I move the fuck forward without having to like harm myself or do any more damage? Because I didn't deserve that at that time ever. And I still don't deserve that. So going through all of that, it strengthened me so much that it allowed me to do like the scariest things that I never thought I would be able to do. And it gave me an unwavering confidence to know that, like, girl, if you got through all of that shit, you are going to be fine. And my motto is to live all out. And I have to thank my ex for that, because before I was living, but not on purpose. It was more on just like accident, really. And I did a lot of things in my life, but it wasn't purposeful. It wasn't as meaningful as it is now. So it's been quite the journey for sure.
Wow. Kelly, thank you so much for opening up your heart and being so vulnerable on this podcast. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. And um, everyone who knows me knows that I welcome tears. I'm like, okay, tears are a normal part and crying. So thank you for allowing those tears to come out. And also thank you for not apologizing for it. Cause often when women start crying, they immediately go, sorry, sorry, sorry. And you didn't. And so
Mhm.
that's huge. I'm proud of you for not even, not
Thank you.
even apologizing for having emotions, because you shouldn't. But
Right.
so often I tell people, I'm like, don't apologize, stop. You're allowed to cry. So
Yeah.
anyone listening, if you're also crying along with Kelly's story, you're allowed to cry also, because that is a moving story. Because when you go through something that crazy, like, I mean, you obviously were very tricked by the man that you married. And I'm sure
Yeah.
someone listening probably understands what that's like. I know I've had relationships in my past like that where I thought the guy was someone, and there are some men and women, of course, it goes both ways, that, unfortunately, they're really good at tricking people because they're hurting, of course, that's coming from a hurt place. And so they're able to pretend to be someone they're not, and sometimes they're very convincing. And so it's so hard. There's no words to even describe how painful it is to be on the receiving end of that, to be
Right.
like, how did I not know? How did all
Mhm.
this happen? Like, how did I date you and marry you without even knowing that you like were going to end up back into rehab, and yeah, like having a child you didn't tell me about, and now having a new child with a girl in rehab. Like, seriously, it's mind blowing to think that can happen to anyone, because the amount of pain that you would have felt and probably still sometimes feel. It's hard to even fathom, but I guarantee someone listening is so thankful. I mean, first of all, I'm very thankful for the fact that you shared your story, because I love stories of not the pain, but I love the hope that you provide. And I know someone listening is like, wow, I have hope. Like, if
Yeah.
she could get up off her feet, if she could, go through something so hard, to go through a divorce and to go through a man breaking her heart, like, to
Mhm.
such a crazy extent, and if she can get up and still live every day to help others, I guarantee, you can too, and I can too. Like, we can do that, even though it's not easy, for sure.
Yeah, I'm much more compassionate, much more humble. I'm much more peaceful. Like I look at the world in a much, much different way. And even though like I was a good person back then, I think I was just a little bit lost. I was young, I was partying. Like for me, it wasn't that, I don't know. It just was different. And now I feel alive. I feel like if all of that didn't happen, I would still be the person I was prior, which I loved her, but she isn't the person that I am today, which is somebody I really, truly love. And like, it just gave me so much confidence. And like you said, we went to marriage counseling throughout this whole, like not this whole thing, but a couple times. And so he ended up like, she told me the therapist was like, he is a sociopath. He has no
Mhm.
empathy. He lacks empathy. And yeah, like I basically got really tricked. And what's crazy, I was telling you earlier how my dreams come true. I just recently, just 2 days ago, I looked at my old journal entries. And around the time that I met him, I had a dream that I was driving on the wrong side of the road, like going towards traffic. And so what I interpreted that immediately was like, wrong way, don't go that way, don't go in that direction. And then there was another dream that came up where I was journaling, and wrote that when I woke up, I had this like really crazy feeling in my stomach that I was getting played. Those were my exact words in the
Whoa.
journal. Insane.
Before you met him, or right when you guys started dating, or?
Right when we started dating.
Weird. So
Yeah.
I wonder if, like, deep down you had a gut feeling, like you like knew really deep down, because often we have like maybe little baby red flags, but we don't really like, we're like, well, you're being crazy, or you're like, we
Yeah.
talk ourselves out of that gut feeling. But usually if you don't feel like total peace in your gut, a lot of
Yeah.
times that means something. So maybe your dreams were like coming up as a way of being like, hey, Kelly, like, you're not at peace right now. And you were
Yeah.
like, yes, I am. This is awesome. It's a great relationship, you know?
You know what's crazy is that all my friends that knew him, all my whole like entire family, he literally tricked all of us because I thought he was such a good, like nice human. And not to say that he isn't, because there is a part of him that is. It's just that he's lost. He's lost. He really got into drugs when he was a teenager, and he had, gotten somebody pregnant when he was 14. And so he had a kid when he was 14 that he never took care of. So it was like all of these things and traumas in his life, which is why he projects the way that he does and lacks a shit ton of empathy.
Mm.
But I think what really helped me kind of get through all of this was the fact that I realized that he was hurt so bad that he just couldn't control himself, and that it had nothing to do with me. And it just had everything to do with his experience in his life. And that just made me sad for him. So I forgave him a long time ago. I forgave him. I see him randomly here in San Diego. I don't hate him. I have no anger towards him anymore. It took me a while to get there, but what I do have is like love and compassion. And people think I'm fucking crazy, but honestly, that's all I could do, because when I was pissed, it was only hurting me. It wasn't hurting him. And it's like, why even be mad at anybody when they're suffering too?
Yeah. So what advice would you give someone who is at rock bottom like you were? And I know you had kind of a crazy experience like you talked about in the bathtub where like God just embraced you basically. But maybe not everyone is, able to have that amazing experience that you had. So
Yeah.
do you have any, other pieces of advice you might give?
Yeah, I would say number one, you have to put yourself first. You have to put yourself first. You have to do the things that are going to make you feel good, even if you don't want to do. So don't do what I did and like drink yourself to almost death and like close all the blinds and kind of check out, because that's not healthy. And honestly, looking back, I just feel so bad for that person. I feel so bad. I wish I could like embrace her and tell her that everything is going to be better than okay. But knowing that too, having the faith that things are going to be better, and that what's happening right now is just you're in the shit, girl. You're in the shit, and it's going to pass, so long as you have like an open mind and open heart to allow that to happen. Because if you're closed off and you're closed minded and you're like, this is never going to change, or I'm the victim. I mean, I could have pulled the victim card for a very long time, but I chose not to. I did in the beginning because I was just like distraught and not knowing what the hell to do. But as soon as you are able to take radical responsibility for whatever happened, you are then able to take your power back and no give it to anybody, anything, and anyone really. So you're able to then get on your own 2 feet and move forward. And a lot of what had helped me through this, if you guys just want like some tangible items, is meditation. Meditation's so good. Meditation's so good. Having a strong support team, asking for help, even if you don't want to and you're not used to it, people are wanting to help you and they're willing to help you.
So who was the first person you asked for help once you finally came out of your funk and you were willing to talk to someone? Because you were basically blocking everyone out before.
Yeah.
So who did you reach out to?
My mom and my sister. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because we're not that close, but in those moments where like I really need somebody, they know like to get in their car, come get me. Let's figure all of this out, because I've been through it with guys and it's crazy. It's definitely something like I want to write about it because it's insane. But ultimately I feel like my relationships are a reflection of how I'm feeling about myself. So what I need to do is really higher my standards, promote, self-love, and really have that self-love. And again, I don't think I truly had that before all of this happened. And it wasn't until, again, I was brought to my knees that it made me look at things differently, including myself. Like, Kelly, this is your life. This is serious. It's not just a game. And why are you feeling the way that you're feeling about yourself? Like, why do you have those doubts, those fears, those limiting beliefs? And why are you acting in a way that you're really not caring about yourself? You have to take ownership of that and you have to turn it around, because if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for you.
Yeah. So what if someone here who's listening has not hit rock bottom? What would you say to like urge them? Because what if someone is not so lucky that they ever get to rock bottom, which it's almost like lucky to hit rock bottom because it means you'll actually take action on your life. But if you never hit rock
Yes.
bottom, you may never take action, which means some people might live in that little like mediocre circle for forever. So what would you tell that person?
Totally. So I think it depends on the situation, right? But one thing that you had said earlier that it actually rang really true for me. It's like something you said reminded me of what I was telling myself. Like the red flags, right? The red flags, they weren't there until we got married. No joke. I'm not even kidding you. They were not there. Like I thought he was the perfect guy and everything was fine. And it wasn't until after we got married, then I started to see the signs. And it was like little red flag, which red flag to me is like a hit on the head from the universe. So it was like little hit here, okay, all right, we're done with that little hit. Here's another little hit. Here's another little hit. And it wasn't until like, because I wasn't letting go of him, I wasn't separating myself from him, I wasn't doing anything to help the situation. So
You
it
were
was like
like,
the
were you just
universe.
like ignoring it or something? Like you were kind of pretending like it'll all work out or something?
Well, we would have conversations, but I was hopeful that it was going to work out because I fell in love with a completely different person than who he ended up being after we got married. And so I wanted that person back. I saw a glimpse of that person. And so I was waiting for him to just come full circle, come back around. And it just never really happened. And so because of that, it was like, hit on the head here, hit on the head here, hit on the head here. And my boundary where when I'm in a relationship, you do not cheat on me because I will leave you. There's no situation in the world that would ever let me stay with a man that cheats on me. And so that's my boundary. And so it was like all of these things started happening, right? Everything that I had mentioned to you guys. And then it finally was like, here's the really big bang on the head. It was the cheating and then getting her pregnant. So listen, I would say listen to the red flags, like watch the red flags, listen to the universe. Don't allow yourself to get in a really shitty situation like I did for you to leave, because change a lot of the time only happens when your back is against the wall and you're sitting there like, I cannot deal with this anymore. But if you like, some of my friends, I've known people to have like domestic abuse and all of these things happen in their relationships and they just stay and stay and stay and stay. It's like, girl, you deserve better. So promote self-love, act self-loving, and really think of yourself as the highest version of yourself. Would the highest version of yourself deal with any of this shit? Probably not. And if that's the
Right.
case, then you have to make change now.
Yeah. Dang. I have so many different thoughts right now. Gosh, where do I start? Okay. Well, I was going to ask, so when you guys were dating, and then I will get off, I know it isn't all supposed to be about your relationship. It's really supposed to be about picking oneself up. But
It's fine, girl.
did,
Ask.
did you know that he like had an addiction? Like, did you know he had addiction in his past, but you just didn't think that it was ever going to come up again?
So this is how naive I was back then. He told me that he was in AA. And because I asked him, I was like, why are you sober? Like, why don't you drink? And he said that he was in AA because his family drank, like his dad and his mom, and that he didn't want to be like that. And so I was like, oh,
Wow.
okay, like that makes sense. You don't want to drink, you go to AA, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, like
And
you're just trying to like be preventative against
yeah,
being an alcoholic or
right.
something.
Right. And yeah, that wasn't the case. And so what I've known now, like from like working with a sociopath, living with a sociopath, being married to a sociopath, they really project a lot of shit onto other people. They blame a lot of people. And another thing they do is mirror. So like he mirrored everything that I loved, everything that I did, which is why he was like in my business so much. He was quote unquote the perfect man because he mirrored everything that he knew that I wanted. So he was very
Mm,
manipulative. And then he would blame people for everything. So he would blame like the girl that he got pregnant. He blamed the girl that he got pregnant when he was 14. He blamed his mom, his dad. Like it's everybody else's fault but his own.
and that's why you thought he had such bad luck. You're like, dang, this guy has such bad luck because bad things keep happening to him.
Right. I was like, oh, yeah. And so, yeah, he lost his job. I'm pretty sure he was probably high at work. Like, let's be real. He totaled his car, probably because he was drunk or whatever. And
Mm,
so many horrible things were happening to him. And now that I look back at him, like, Kelly, girl. And also, like, on our wedding, now I know what drug use looks like these opioids and stuff that he used. He looked very tired. And so on our wedding day, he looked exactly like that. And so I knew that
uh,
he was like that on our wedding day. So I was actually able to get an annulment. So not a divorce, an annulment. So it really never
mm.
happened through the judge, thank God, because he had a drug addiction and he had a kid that he didn't tell me about. So those were the two bases of that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I apologize. I did say the word divorce earlier,
No, it's
but
okay.
I actually did know that you had told me it's an annulment.
Yeah.
So do you feel like there's questions that you could have asked? Like, I'm just trying to think, like, if there's someone who's in a relationship right now who's hearing this and maybe they aren't on maybe they're at the part where they're seeing little baby red flags, but they're
Mhm.
like, they're not really sure, or it's like kind of confusing, what are some questions they should ask?
I was going to say, get curious, get curious and ask more questions, because I wish I would have done that. I just really trust people. My mom told me this ever since I was little. She's like, Kelly, people too much. And it's because I feel like people should be or are like me, right? I'm like, oh, I'm trusting. Like, you guys should be trusting too. And so that's not the case, obviously. And so with that, I should have asked more questions. I should have kind of dove in more deep when it came to, why did he feel the need to go to AA if he wasn't really an alcoholic? Or, maybe more about his childhood, maybe more about his experience with the girl that he got pregnant when he was 14, or like opening up those uncomfortable doors. Because I think that when you do, like when you have those gut feelings or just that nudge that something isn't really right, open up that door, because you have permission to do that, especially if you're married or in a relationship, living with this person or close to them. Like, don't be afraid, because then you might end up, totally regretting not having those conversations.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's something I like to talk a lot about, because I love talking about relationships. And I feel like often I find that women can be afraid to dive into these hard topics just because, it's just the fear of rocking the boat, right? It's the fear of, well, I don't want to say something that upsets him. I don't want to ask too many questions, and then he'll think I'm clingy or annoying. Like, I want to be cool, or like I want to be like the chill girlfriend or the chill what like,
Totally.
and yes, there's a balance. Like, we're not here saying like ask a million questions and scroll through their email and social media. Like, no, you're not supposed to be, or not, I'm not supposed to, but like we're not saying like you need to be um was paranoid. That's not,
Right.
it's not the
Stage 5.
purpose.
Stage
Yeah,
5.
not a stage 5 flinger. But we are saying like getting curious and asking questions. And I think that's so important during the dating process, to make sure that they're like gonna be a good fit for marriage. Because it can't, when you don't ask really hard questions. Like, I remember when Frankie and I first started dating, and we were moving pretty quickly. And I remember my mentors being like, okay, Janelle, we had a meeting with them, actually, the four of us, the two mentors and Frankie and I. And they were like, okay, today after this phone call, we want you to talk about who's the saver and who's the spender, how much debt do you both have, how much student loans, how much you're paying for cars. Like, they are like, you need to talk about everything. And then they're like, you need to talk about this, and they gave us like this long list. And we got
So
off the call, and like we were like 8 weeks into dating, and we were like, okay. And like, I love honest conversation, obviously.
same.
Like, I do. But like, we were like, okay, so how much debt do you have? Do you like to save or spend more? Like, and so it's really opening up these hard, and like, that's just a baby example. But yeah, it's like asking these harder questions of like, yeah, do you have, maybe it's asking a question like, is there any alcoholism in your family? Or, if he's going to
Right.
AA, being like, hey, can I go to AA with you? I'd love to support you in that way, to be a part of that, because you would be there to witness more of what was happening, or then he might have been like, no, 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 like, I don't want you to. And you'd be like, no, 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 really, I want to be there for you. Like, can I please come
Yeah.
with you? If this is a big thing to you, it's a big thing to me.
Right.
And it's just like letting your lives intertwine in that way. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, obviously, at the same time, you can do as much as you can to prepare and to, ask the right questions and have all the deep conversations. And even if you do all of that, there are still times where people surprise you. And so that's, you can't always prepare for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that I wish I would have dove in a lot deeper. And I think at this point, it's really kind of difficult for me to date because I am so open. I talk about this to anybody that wants to hear about it, because I do think that it is beneficial to talk about what I've been through for other people who have possibly or are going through it or may go through it at some point in their lives. But it is difficult to date because now I feel like I'm very honest, very just raw, like cut the bullshit. I am not sweet pea like Kelly anymore. I'm like smart and aware and conscious. Like I know all, like a lot of you guys play
I'm looking
games
at
and
everything.
yes, yes. And you know what? And I try to like really be aware of like how I'm projecting and how I'm acting and how I'm showing up and how I'm being. But with that, I've noticed that I'm not attracted to many people because my standard is so much higher now than it ever used to be. And again, I have him to thank for that. Like when I see him, I'm like, thank you. Like
Mm.
I send you so much love. Like, thank you so much. Cause I swear I don't even know what I would be doing right now without all of that craziness happening.
Yeah, you'd be a whole other person. I mean, even if none of that, I guess, happened, like you wouldn't have grown the way that you grew. So you're able to find like it seems like you're finding a lot of gratitude in
Totally.
who you became in the process.
Yeah, a lot more confident, a lot less fearful. I think that was the biggest thing because I mean, I just do things without really thinking because I'm like, what is the worst that can happen? I don't think I'll ever experience that type of pain ever again. That was very tough for me. And I just don't think that it'll ever happen again. So now that I have this belief in my head, I'm just not very fearful of anything. Yeah, so it really helped me with my business. It really helped me with like, creating connections, but I am more aware and more conscious. So, I mean, I hope that if anybody is out there that is going through something like this, I hope that you know that you have the choice, you have the power to choose what you want and what direction you want to go in. Like, even if you're engaged, even if you're like in a marriage that is just not fulfilling you and not lighting you up, and it's been a while, or if it's like abusive or anything like that, like please go seek help, go talk to somebody. And you know, we are we take this life for granted so easily. We are not here forever. And just knowing that allows me to almost fearlessly just move forward in the direction of whatever it is that I'm dreaming of. And so I wish that for everybody, honestly.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
beautifully put. Yeah. Yeah. Bring light to those dark areas, you guys. Like that is the point of the Next Level Confident podcast, is to talk about all of the hard topics, all of the messy things that we have, that we go through in our life. And I never want anyone to feel alone in any of those things. And so if you're listening right now and you're going through something hard, you're not alone. We've all been through something hard, and we will again too. It's not
Mhm.
a one and done, and we'll never feel pain again in our life, you know?
So,
So thank you so much, Kelly, for sharing. And so just to wrap up, I'd love if you could share 3 practical action steps, like super
mhm.
practical, that you would love each person to do after listening to this.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that comes to mind for me right now is journaling, like writing things down, because a lot of the times we forget the bits and pieces of maybe our takeaways from a podcast or takeaways from the day or whatever. And so being able to jot that down and doing so in a way of gratitude. I know that this was a kind of like a heavy episode. And so I want to bring light to the situation and just have you know that you were so incredibly powerful. And if you could just like write that down and really own it, and maybe even identify like what parts of your life could be better, identifying what could be better and how can you make the first step towards doing that and taking immediate action upon that. Because the more that we wait, the more that we think, the more that we probably take immediate action, in my opinion, than to just sit there and like wonder, should I do this? Should I not? But if it's lighting you up, if you're excited about it, then definitely make that change towards that excitement. Another thing that I would say is for anybody out there that's struggling right now, get your body moving, because even if you just, dance, if you walk outside, if you just get some fresh air and just like walk your dogs, do something where your body is moving, because that is also something that really helped me through this. Because the more that I stayed in bed, the more that I laid on the couch, the more that I literally was like on the floor, it just didn't feel good. It's not empowering. That's not a state that you want to be in. So something I learned from Tony Robbins is getting into state. So you might want to even look that up, you guys. Go on the computer, look up how do I get into state. And a lot of it for me is like dancing and listening to really high vibe music. The next thing I would say is, and this is more of like, I don't know how tangible it is, but if you guys can really hone in as soon as well, I guess it's tangible. As soon as you wake up, think about like 3 things at least that you're grateful for. And also, aside from that, think of why you're grateful for them. So, this is an exercise that I learned through Tony Robbins and Jarek. And it's basically honing in on the gratitude piece, but also diving in even deeper for each of those pieces to understand why are you grateful for that.
I love that. Yeah, and you went to Tony Robbins, what did you say, like 3 times last year or something like that?
Yeah, girl, 2019 was like me year. It's like self-love year. That was my word of the year. Healing. So I went to all over the place following Tony Robbins everywhere. And more because like it was just a high vibe, fun thing. I didn't feel like I really like needed it. It was just something that I experienced in March in LA at first at Unleash the Power Within. And then I ended up going to Date with Destiny in Australia and then Business Mastery in Amsterdam. And honestly, I'm going to be 100% real. It was a little too much Tony Robbins for me because it's long days. It's a long week. Oh man, I missed half of it. And I'm like, I spent so much money on this shit. So next time I'm going to like space it out a little bit more if I decide to do it again. But yeah, that really helped me too. It was like connecting with people who were also in a very similar situation. Like a lot of people there seek healing, like they are going through cancer, their parents just died, their spouse just died, like crazy traumatic things as well. So I think through that connection and being immersed in that type of energy, it really just helped me realize like, girl, you can get through anything now, and like don't take life so seriously, just enjoy yourself.
Yeah, totally. I love that. Yeah, so because I think like going to Tony Robbins, getting a therapist, like if you're in a really like if someone's listening and you're like really in a dark place, seek help. And if you don't feel comfortable, like, sometimes you don't want to tell your mom or your sister or a friend, or you like don't, there's not, sometimes you don't have anyone to reach out to. First of all, you can reach out to me, Janelle, you can reach out to Kelly, you
Yeah,
can reach out to any of either of us, but also of course, I don't want to minimize like the need for a therapist or um, doing something that where you work through it, because you don't want to just put a band-aid on it and
mhm,
like go through the motions of life again.
totally.
And sometimes you can't just snap out of it in a single second or whatever. So sometimes it takes time. Sometimes the healing, generally it takes time, and the healing, um, it means getting uncomfortable with opening up those wounds and talking about them, and going into those uncomfortable spaces so that you do grow. It doesn't mean you just wake up one day and you're just all of a sudden better, because you just are. Like usually
Yeah.
there's work involved, and like I think you're a good testament to that, of like immersing in Tony Robbins. Is there anything else that you did to that like brought you healing?
Yeah. So one thing that came to mind that I didn't talk about yet was a breath work. I don't know if any of you guys have ever tried breath work, but it is out of this world and super healing. So I encourage you guys to check that out. Have you tried breath work?
I have a little bit. Like, I mean, for me, it's just literally breathing. I think there's some quote that's like, you're just 3 breaths away from peace or something like that. So a lot of times for me, it's just closing my eyes. And I guess one that I have done before is called square breathing. Have you heard
Mm,
of that one?
yeah.
So for anyone listening, square breathing is basically like in your mind, you're formulating a square. And so say there's like a 4-second inhale. And if you're watching the video, you can like watch my finger, but if you're not, you're just gonna have to visualize it. You're forming a square because you're breathing in for 4 seconds, you're holding it for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and then you hold for 4 seconds, inhale, and you repeat. So it's
Mm,
like you're creating a square with
yeah.
the breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, and it's a square. So I think,
Yeah.
I don't know, that's one that I know of, and I do that. I learned that in like 7th grade psychology, and I've used that like my whole life
Oh,
to
that's so
help
good.
me when I'm like really anxious. But is
Yeah.
there any one that you would recommend people check out?
I mean, if you really want to get into it, it's called like holotropic breath work. And it's basically where you're breathing so intensely for a pretty good amount of time. And you start feeling this ties in really good to my story. Um, you start feeling sensations, right? You start feeling whatever sensations around you. And so, what I realized through doing breath work is that that is what happened to me in the bathtub when I was like hyperventilating, and it was
Mm.
that same feeling of feeling supported, feeling loved, feeling like, essentially like spirits. And I know that sounds crazy for some people, but I felt that energy surrounding me and just telling me, like, I'm spirit, I'm strong enough, I'm guided, I'm okay, like I'll be fine.
Mm,
And so breath work brings me that same exact healing. So honestly, I found breath work that day in the bathtub, which is insane because I didn't try it again until, later on, probably 6 months later at a
that's
spiritual
awesome.
retreat. Yeah, it was
That's so yeah,
crazy.
there's I think another really good practical tool to add to that toolbox that you said, journaling, moving your body. What was your third one? I know you've mentioned meditation somewhere on earlier on. What did you say is your third one?
I forgot the other one.
That's
I
okay.
forgot. We'll have
Whoever's
to look it back.
listening,
Yeah.
hopefully you remember. and then breath work, of course. So
Yeah.
Kelly, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing your story. So you guys, if you've connected with Kelly, you can find her on Instagram. It is at I am underscore Kelly, Kelly, Ann. Kelly, any final words?
Yes. My motto is just live all out, ladies. Live all out. And if you feel like you are not doing that, please, 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 please find a way to do that, because this is the only life that we're going to have here right now at this moment. So enjoy it.
Let's end on that note. Have a great day, you guys.